What if I told you that the phrase, like, being sick to your stomach, isn't just colorful poetry? That it's actually a literal physical memo from a second brain operating right inside your abdomen.
I mean, we throw around these idioms all the time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
if you have a tough decision to make, it's something you really have to stomach. Or, you're standing off stage before a big presentation and you've got butterflies.
Right, we just treat those feelings as metaphors. We assume all the real processing is happening exclusively between our ears.
Because we have this deeply ingrained biological bias, I think. We tend to view the brain as the undisputed CEO of the body. Just sitting up there in the penthouse suite of the skull, handing down orders.
Yeah, and the stomach in that whole model is just the basement plumbing, like a passive sack that just holds your lunch.
Right. But stepping into the reality of modern biology just strips that metaphor right away. And really, our mission for this deep dive is to explore a fundamental shift in how we understand human anatomy.
It really is a total paradigm shift.
Yeah, because the source material we're unpacking today reveals a real, physical, two-way dialogue happening between your gut and your brain, like right this very second.
Mm-hmm.
The CEO isn't just issuing orders. The corner office is actually being flooded with relentless, urgent status reports from the basement.
And the basement has surprisingly strong opinions on how the entire company should be run.
Wow. Okay. So to understand how that communication actually works, we kind of have to physically zoom in, right, on the tissue lining your digestive tract.
Right, specifically your stomach and your intestines. When scientists look at that tissue, they aren't just seeing smooth muscle and mucous membranes. Woven directly into the walls of your gut is this incredibly dense, complex web of nerve cells.
But I mean, when you say a dense web, my mind immediately goes to the brain or the spinal cord. Having nerves in the stomach sounds like they'd just be basic sensors,
Right.
just telling you if you're full or something.
Well, it is far more expansive than just basic sensors. We are talking about hundreds of millions of neurons operating in your digestive tract.
Wait, really? Hundreds of millions.
Yeah. To put the sheer scale of that into perspective, there are actually more neurons lining your gut than there are in your entire spinal cord.
That completely upends the traditional hierarchy we're taught. The spinal cord is supposed to be the body's main information highway, yet the tissue wrapping around our breakfast outnumbers it.
It really does. The network is so vast and so intricate that medical science gave it its own classification. They call it the enteric nervous system. But if you spend any time reading the current literature, you will constantly see researchers referring to it as the second brain.
Okay, I do have to push back a little on the phrase second brain. It sounds, I don't know, a bit sensational.
Sure, yeah, I get it.
Like, if my small intestine is a brain, it's obviously not doing Sudoku while I'm trying to work. It's not forming conscious memories. So calling it a brain almost feels like a marketing stretch for what is ultimately just highly complex, automated plumbing.
Well, it forces us to kind of redefine what we consider thinking. You're right, it isn't writing poetry. But classifying it as mere automated plumbing drastically underestimates what it does.
Okay, so what makes it a brain then?
What makes the enteric nervous system a brain is its profound independence. It has the computational power to sense its environment, process that data, and execute complex decisions without needing any input from your actual brain.
I mean, what kind of decisions does a digestive tract even need to make on its own?
Well, think about the pure logistics of digestion. It is arguably the most complicated mechanical and chemical operation your body performs.
Right.
When you eat a meal, the gut has to instantly analyze the complex chemical makeup of that food. It has to calculate and release the exact right balance of digestive enzymes, and then coordinate peristalsis.
That's the rhythmic, wave-like muscular squeezing, right, that pushes the food along.
Exactly. And it has to push the food at the exact right speed, too. Too fast, and you don't absorb nutrients. Too slow, and things get toxic.
Oh.
Yeah, so the second brain manages that entire massive logistics operation locally. It doesn't ping the brain for instructions on how to digest an apple. It senses the apple, assesses the situation, and orchestrates the muscle contractions and chemical releases entirely on its own.
That's incredible.
It really transforms our view of the gut from a dumb pipe into a highly sophisticated, independent processing center.
Okay, so if the basement is running its own autonomous operation down there, that kind of raises a mechanical question for me.
Sure, what's that?
Well, we know we experience gut feelings. We feel the sudden nausea of bad news, for example. So if the gut is so independent, How does its activity actually breach our conscious awareness?
Yeah.
There has to be a physical bridge connecting the two processing centers, right?
There is, and it's a massive physical bridge. It's a thick cable of nerve fibers called the vagus nerve.
Oh, the vagus nerve.
Yeah.
That is everywhere in wellness discussions right now. But it's like rarely explained physically.
Yeah.
What actually is it?
Physically, it is one of the longest nerves in the human body. The name vagus is actually rooted in the Latin word for wandering.
Wandering.
Yeah, because it originates up in your brainstem and physically wanders all the way down through your neck, branching out into your chest to touch your heart and your lungs, before plunging deeply into the tissue of your gut. It is the hardwired telephone line linking the first brain to the second brain.
Okay, so given our old biological bias about the brain being the CEO, I feel like the natural assumption is that this thick telephone cable is primarily used by the brain to just bark orders downward, like heart, beat faster, lungs, breathe, stomach, start digesting.
Right, and that assumption held for a very long time in medicine. But this is where the research drops a massive plot twist.
Okay, I love a plot twist.
When scientists actually developed the technology to measure the electrical traffic traveling along the vagus nerve, the data showed the exact opposite of the top-down model.
Wait,
Yeah. Roughly 80 to 90% of the nerve fibers inside the vagus nerve are dedicated to carrying signals upward, from the gut to the brain.
Are you serious? So the gut is doing almost all of the talking.
Almost all of it, yeah.
Wow. So it's not headquarters shabbing into a megaphone at all. It's more like a 911 dispatch center where the field agents are relentlessly lighting up the radio, calling in status updates, and telling the CEO what's happening on the ground.
That's a great analogy. And the volume of that upward data is staggering. The gut is constantly reporting like, we're slightly inflamed, or we've detected a pathogen, or nutrient absorption is optimal. It is a relentless, high-speed stream of physiological data flowing into the base of the brain every single second of your life.
But the conscious brain clearly doesn't interpret that data as a spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm nervous about a speech, I don't get a conscious thought saying blood flow to the intestinal lining has decreased by 12%. I just feel a sense of dread.
Exactly. The brain takes that raw upward electrical data and translates it into a language we experience consciously: emotion, mood, and intuition.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so when a stressor alters your digestive environment, the second brain senses that local disruption and fires an urgent memo up the vagus nerve. Your first brain receives that alarm and synthesizes it into a visceral sensation: the butterflies in your stomach, the sudden instinct that a situation is dangerous.
So a gut feeling is literal, biological data bubbling up just beneath the level of conscious logic. That alone completely rewires how you have to look at your own body.
It really does.
But the source material takes us a step further, and this is where we have to look closely at who is actually holding the telephone down there, because the entities sending these signals up the vagus nerve aren't just human cells.
No, they're not. And we are crossing into territory here that genuinely sounds like science fiction. Your gut is home to an immense, bustling ecosystem of microscopic alien life known as the gut microbiome.
Let's clearly define the microbiome for anyone picturing like something out of a sci-fi movie. We were talking about bacteria, right?
Bacteria, fungi, viruses, and other single-celled organisms. And the scale is just difficult to comprehend. There are trillions of them living inside your intestines. They literally outnumber your own human cells.
Trillions.
Yeah. And for generations, medical science just viewed these microbes as helpful little janitors. We provided them a dark, warm place to live, and in exchange, they helped us break down tough plant fibers that our own stomachs couldn't digest.
Sort of a basic transactional relationship. We chew the food, they sweep up the complex carbs.
Right, but the current science completely shatters that janitorial model. These microbes are actually functioning as microscopic chemical factories. As they metabolize your food, they produce a startling array of byproducts.
Okay.
And crucially, they're manufacturing some of the exact same signaling molecules that the human brain uses to regulate emotion and mood.
Wait, our gut bacteria are synthesizing brain chemicals.
They are. The most prominent example in the literature is serotonin. That's the neurotransmitter we heavily associate with mood stability, happiness, and well-being.
Right. That's the primary target for many modern antidepressant medications.
Exactly. We instinctively categorize serotonin as a brain chemical. Yet researchers estimate that up to 90% of the body's total serotonin is actually produced down in the gut, with resident bacteria playing a vital role in that manufacturing process.
Wait, I have to pause here because the mechanics of this are kind of confusing me.
Sure.
Even if my gut bacteria are helping manufacture massive amounts of serotonin, it can't just float up into my brain, can it?
Huh.
Because the brain has a highly restrictive security system, the blood-brain barrier, which is specifically designed to keep foreign chemicals in the blood from sneaking into the brain tissue. So how does gut serotonin actually impact my mood if it's locked out of the brain?
That is the critical mechanical question. You're right. The serotonin produced in the gut does not cross the blood-brain barrier. It doesn't physically travel to the brain at all.
Okay, so what happens?
Instead, it acts locally. The lining of your gut contains specialized cells, enterochromaffin cells, that release serotonin. This local serotonin stimulates the endings of the vagus nerve that are embedded right there in the gut tissue.
Ah, so it's converting a chemical signal into an electrical signal.
Precisely. The bacteria influence the chemical environment of the gut, which stimulates the vagus nerve, which then sends an electrical impulse up to the brain. So the physical serotonin stays in the basement, but the message it generated gets beamed straight to the CEO.
I mean, if you're trying to process the implications of this, it's a little unsettling.
Just a bit, yeah.
Like, if trillions of alien bacteria in my digestive tract are constantly manipulating the electrical signal sent to my brain, are these tiny bugs somehow controlling my emotions? Are we just meat puppets for our microbiome?
I mean, it is remarkably easy to jump to that somewhat terrifying conclusion, but looking at the evolutionary biology, it is not a system of malicious control.
Okay, good.
The bacteria aren't sitting at a control panel trying to make you happy or sad. They are simply living their life cycles, eating and producing chemical byproducts. Over millions of years of evolution, your enteric nervous system, your second brain, learned to listen to those bacterial byproducts.
Because monitoring them is useful.
Exactly. It evolved to monitor the health of the microbiome because a healthy microbiome means a healthy human. It is a deeply interconnected biological partnership, a constant chemical dialogue.
Okay, a symbiotic relationship. I can live
Yeah.
with that. But because this mechanical connection between gut bacteria and brain state is so profound, it has triggered an absolute explosion in both medical research and, unfortunately, commercial marketing.
Oh, absolutely. The tantalizing frontier being explored right now is whether manipulating the gut microbiome could directly influence our baseline mood, our stress resilience, and even treat psychiatric conditions like anxiety and depression.
And the source material highlights some incredible studies to back this up, particularly the animal models.
Yeah, the animal models are fascinating because scientists can perform experiments that would just be impossible in humans. They use germ-free mice. These are mice bred in entirely sterile environments, so they have absolutely zero gut microbiome.
So they're like a blank slate.
Right. And these mice exhibit deeply abnormal stress responses.
Okay, so they take these blank slate mice and they introduce bacteria.
Through a procedure called a fecal microbiota transplant, they take the gut microbiome from one mouse and transfer it into the germ-free mouse. In one famous set of studies, researchers took the gut bacteria from a naturally bold, adventurous strain of mice and transplanted it into a naturally anxious, timid strain of mice.
Wait, how do you even measure anxiety in a mouse? You can ask it how it feels.
You observe behavior typically through something called an open field test. An anxious mouse will hug the walls of a new enclosure, staying in the shadows, avoiding open spaces. A bold mouse will march right out into the center of the brightly lit arena to explore.
Okay, that makes sense. So what happened after the transplant?
When researchers transplanted the microbiome from the bold mice into the anxious mice suddenly became significantly more exploratory and bold.
They literally transplanted a personality trait by moving bacteria.
They did. And when researchers reverse it, transplanting anxious microbiomes into bold mice, the bold mice begin hugging the walls. It demonstrates a clear causal link between the bacterial population in the gut and the behavioral output of the brain.
That is wild.
And furthermore, when we look at human observational studies, we consistently see that people diagnosed with clinical depression or severe anxiety host visibly different, less diverse populations of gut bacteria compared to people without those conditions.
I mean, that sounds like a definitive breakthrough. If depressed humans have disrupted microbiomes and changing a mouse's microbiome changes its anxiety levels, the solution just seems obvious, right?
Wait.
Fix the bacteria to fix the brain. But looking at how complex this system is, I have to imagine researchers are throwing up massive red flags against jumping to that conclusion.
The red flags are everywhere. and they are critical for anyone consuming this science. This is the exact type of paradigm-shifting research that races ahead of the clinical evidence and gets massively oversold. First of all, a mouse is not a human being.
Right.
A mouse's biology, its stress triggers, and its strictly controlled laboratory diet do not map cleanly onto the sprawling complexity of human psychology. We cannot copy-paste a mouse study onto human mental health.
What about the human studies? I mean, if we see that people with depression definitively have different gut bacteria, isn't that proof of the connection?
It is proof of a connection, but it is not proof of causation. The problem of cause and effect is the biggest hurdle in this field. It is incredibly tempting to look at a depressed patient with a disrupted microbiome and say, well, the bad bacteria causes the depression.
But wait, the vagus nerve is a two-way street, like we said earlier. We know that being deeply depressed fundamentally changes a person's behavior. It changes your sleep architecture. It changes your stress hormones, which we know alters digestion speed. And crucially, it completely changes what you eat.
And the mechanism you just described is exactly why scientists are being so cautious. When you are stressed or depressed, your brain sends signals down the vagus nerve that can slow down or speed up gut motility. That physical change alters the environment for the bacteria.
Oh, so the brain is changing the gut's habitat.
Yes. Plus, if a depressive episode causes you to stop eating complex fibers and start eating highly processed comfort foods, you are selectively starving your beneficial bacteria.
Wow. So the low mood and the dietary changes might actually be destroying the gut environment rather than the gut environment causing the low mood.
Right. Or a third, entirely separate factor is driving both simultaneously. Untangling the initial cause from the downstream effects in a system as chaotic as the human body is incredibly difficult.
Which brings us to the danger of commercial hype. You can walk into almost any pharmacy or grocery store today and see shelves lined with expensive probiotic supplements and specialized yogurts, all promising to cure anxiety or boost your mood by optimizing your gut health. It's like trying to fix a deeply complex, internally crashing computer by just throwing a brand new keyboard at it.
That's a perfect way to put it. The keyboard is technically connected to the system, but you are massively oversimplifying the architecture of the problem to sell a peripheral.
Yeah, we know the keyboard and the computer talk to each other, but swallowing a capsule of a few billion generic bacteria and expecting it to instantly rewire a depressive episode completely ignores the complexity of the ecosystem.
The honest consensus from the scientific community is that the gut-brain axis is profoundly real. It is a critical frontier of human health. But commercial products promising to resolve your mental health via your gut are running miles ahead of what science can currently prescribe or guarantee. We are still in the infancy of understanding how to therapeutically leverage this dialogue.
So, if the magic yogurt isn't the answer, what are the concrete, scientifically sound takeaways? How can you actually apply this knowledge to your own body today?
Well, the most actionable takeaway is incredibly grounded. The basics of human nutrition matter on a level we are only just beginning to appreciate.
Just eating well.
Yeah, because the system is entirely interconnected, what is generally good for your gut microbiome is good for your cognitive health. A highly varied diet, rich in diverse plants and fibers, provides the exact spectrum of complex carbohydrates that beneficial microbes require to thrive.
Okay, so eat your veggies.
Pretty much. By feeding the ecosystem a diverse diet, you support a robust, resilient second brain, which in turn sends healthy, stabilizing signals up the vagus nerve.
But we also have to respect the downward traffic on that highway, right? We focused heavily on the gut talking to the brain, but the brain's downward signaling is powerful enough to physically alter the gut tissue.
Absolutely. Psychological stress is not just a mental phenomenon, it is a physical event in the abdomen. High stress sends intense electrical traffic down the vagus nerve, which can induce inflammation and alter the muscular contractions of the gut.
Which perfectly explains why chronic digestive issues, like irritable bowel syndrome, are so notoriously tied to psychological stress and trauma.
Yes. Modern gastroenterology is increasingly treating conditions like IBS not merely as a local plumbing defect, but as a miscommunication across the brain-gut axis. They are deploying therapies that address both ends of the vagus nerve simultaneously.
And I mean, just as an important note from the source material here, because this deep dive heavily explores the mechanics of mental health, anxiety, and depression. If the physical or emotional realities we're discussing today resonate with something you are personally struggling with, the best next step is always to speak with a medical professional. The science of the microbiome is endlessly fascinating, but a doctor can really help you interpret what this bidirectional highway actually means for your specific individual health.
Very true. The emerging science of the gut-brain connection is a powerful lens for understanding our biology, but it is meant to complement, not replace, professional medical guidance.
Definitely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, it seems like the most profound shift required of us is entirely conceptual. We have to permanently retire the outdated model of human anatomy. The body is not a dictatorship run by an isolated brain in a skull.
No, it is a lifelong cooperative superorganism. It is a ceaseless dialogue between your head and your abdomen, carried across physical nerves and translated through chemical signals. Your gut and the trillions of microbial tenants living inside it have a permanent, undeniable seat at the table of your daily consciousness.
Which means your gut feelings are genuine, actionable data. Somewhere in the static of that upward chatter along the vagus nerve, your second brain is physically attempting to tell your first brain something vital about your environment. We are just finally beginning to learn how to translate it.
It forces you to realize you are an ecosystem interacting with the world, not just a single isolated mind.
And that reality leads to a final, slightly provocative thought I want to leave you with. Something to turn over in your mind the next time you experience a powerful intuition. We've established that our literal gut feelings, our baseline moods, and potentially even elements of our behaviors are heavily influenced by the chemical murmurs of trillions of non-human bacteria living inside our tissue.
Right.
So, if our microbiome is deeply entwined with our emotional architecture, how much of what you consider your true self, your unique personality, or your deepest intuition is actually human? And how much of it is just the collective voice of your microbes?
Unraveling where the human ends and the microbiome begins is a biological and philosophical puzzle that will honestly define the next era of science.
Well, that's something to think about the next time you get butterflies before a big moment. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.